Welcome to Muay Thai Bones.
Couch Edition. If you're new to Muay Thai Bones, this podcast is this epic Muay Thai podcast where we talk about everything Muay Thai, but it was done in the car, like our first 8 or 12. Yeah. Yes, when we're driving across Thailand, everything is a little bit still. Not able to drive across Thailand because of COVID, so we've been doing it from our apartment.
You're in our apartment.
We look forward to when we can get back to the car.
The couch is our other car.
Yes, as you are fond of saying, and I'm never quite sure what you mean by that.
There's a bumper sticker that's like, my other car is a Mustang, but it's on like a shitty car.
And so if you're new to us as a patron, this is going to be, all the video is on YouTube for everybody, but patrons get to have the audio version of this. They can run it through their subscription services.
However you listen to your podcasts, that's where we're at.
Totally.
Right.
But as a bonus to our patron supporters. Our patron supporters are those that make this possible.
They make everything happen.
Totally.
Everything that happens because of our patrons.
Totally. So, we're just going to dive right in to something deep, which is what we normally do. If you don't love what we're talking about, just skip ahead 20, 30 minutes and you'll be onto some other part of Muay Thai. But I think this session is
Section?
this
segment?
No, this whole Muay Thai Bones podcast this time is going to be a lot about your process, the process you're in. Looking over some of the subjects we have.
I'm in a new process.
We mentioned this in
the last episode, right?
If it wasn't the last, that was the one before. I remember when we were on the balcony.
Oh,
I think
that was
when
a while
we
ago.
started talking about 3.0.
Okay.
Sylvie 3.0, maybe fill people in what Sylvie 3.0. We're not going to go into real depth of this, but
because of COVID, there's no fights. Anyone who knows what my process has been, I fight a fucking lot. I fight a lot. And so to take that part out of what I do and what my process is really significant. But Kevin is very intuitive and very smart and straight away realizing, like, let's aim for, we don't know when fights are going to come back, so let's use this time to basically put Sylvie under some serious construction that could never happen when fights are happening.
totally. And we decided you're not maybe fighting for a year.
Yeah.
So instead of like every month, is it fight
Is it
time?
coming?
Yeah. To not make yourself dependent on something you have no control over. We're just like, fuck fights for a year. If they come, whatever.
Yeah.
But instead we're starting this deconstruction, reconstruction process.
Like when you break up with your boyfriend, you're like, I'm going to work on myself.
It's
I'm going to take the time to work on myself.
and your boyfriend is fighting.
Totally. Totally.
So our first subject is going to be sparring. So, still not enthused about it.
I'm very enthused about it. We've talked, when Kevin and I do these Bones podcasts, we're talking for real, but we're talking about things that we have talked about. So this is not like the first time we've talked about this. So sparring is something that for the 8 years, and actually when I was in America too, because of the way that I trained, I have never been able to get consistent sparring.
Well, let's go back. I want to go back for a moment for people who follow you. Back to America when you trained almost exclusively with Master K, 70-plus-year-old Thai man who had some cultural, old-fashioned issues about sparring with you. He'd put on the big belly pad to create like social distance between you and him. And you basically had no peers. You just had him. You were in his basement. And then I remember we signed up for you to fight your first fight in Virginia. And we're like, you basically have not ever sparred.
No contact. I've had no
I
contact.
mean, he'd do some like whack whack things with you, but it was not
It's not the same
live,
thing.
not going live. And I remember you basically fought your first fight with having sparred like 3 times.
I think it was 2 or 3 times.
And one time we went, or a couple of times we went down to the Watt in New York to get some taste of actual sparring. So getting Sylvie sparring has been on the menu from the very first fight.
Yeah.
And you're 264 in, which is incredible. So, I don't know. We don't really need to go into all the like hiccups with trying to get sparring, your size, your gender, your shyness, right? I want to talk more about the actual for 3.0. We are going 10 rounds a day
Yeah.
minimum, right?
And I do exceed that.
Totally. And so we want to talk about why 10 rounds, like why dive so deep into it? What is it addressing that's been missing for you? A little bit our thoughts about growing eyes, like what has it been like? We're going to talk about Yodkhunpon in the next section, so we maybe don't go too far into Yodkhunpon.
Well, here's something that people who don't have my particular experience might not understand. For years when I was at Lana up in Chiang Mai, and I was fighting very frequently, like every 10 or 11 days, my trainers would say you don't need to spar because you fight so much.
Yeah.
So like fighting was getting the experience that you would be getting with sparring. People in the West who don't have the fight opportunities that we have here in Thailand, where you go 6 months between fights or something,
or
you
more.
get your experience through sparring. And
Right.
then fighting is like this kind of pass-fail thing about whether it's worked. They have to go together. Like, everyone's wrong. Like,
Well, for the sake of understanding the Thais are looking at an adult fighter.
yes.
But they're coming at it from a concept of Thais that have been raised sparring as kids. So you get your sparring in as kids early.
Yeah.
So when they're dealing with an adult fighter, they are already assuming you have many of the, what I like to call the connective tissue that comes from having been raised in Muay Thai. But you started Muay Thai when you were 24. So a big part of what you've tried to pursue in sparring, which has been very hard for you to get, is to build that connective tissue that Thais get when they're 9, 10,
Right.
11, 12.
Right. And there's also this, if you're fighting every week, when are you going to spar? Because their Thais love to take time off after a fight, before a fight, whatever.
But you don't do that.
I wasn't doing that,
Yeah.
but I was basically outside of everything that they're like, this is how this goes.
Yeah,
and
that's
so to
true.
be like, I want sparring, they're like, this
so
doesn't make sense.
So for a Thai, you fought, you rest, you charge your battery
Right.
up, you get back in the
So
ring.
I was trying to get experience
Yeah.
fighting a lot, the way that people who are basically on their way out of fighting are like, I only fight, I don't really train between, but I'm like training in between. Like, I'm basically collapsing the bookends
Totally.
of how a Muay Thai career in Thailand actually works.
Totally.
So what's weird about me is that I have 264 fights and I suck at sparring. Like, I'm very bad at sparring because I don't
Well,
have the experience
One
in it.
reason you're bad is because that's how you talk
Yeah,
about it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing with sparring is that
Let's put it this way. You did not like sparring.
I
You
did
hated
not like
it.
sparring because I was bad at it.
No.
But the thing is that, like, when you have hard sparring in a gym, which for folks who only ever listen to other Westerners, there is hard sparring in Thailand. It is not all technical, all light, all the time. There is a plethora of different ways of sparring in Thailand. There is hard sparring, and when you do hard sparring, it is meant to mimic all of the pressures around a fight to acclimate younger fighters to that pressure.
Right.
I didn't get that. Like, I didn't get that kind of acclimation. So I'm super tense. I'm super, like, unplayful, like, unable to experiment with things. And then in a fight, my corner will be like, well, you're already winning. You already know that you can go and win with knees. So take this round to experiment. And I'm like, who the fuck experiments in a fight who doesn't have the confidence, wherewithal, whatever, to, like, know how to play around in that situation? I didn't know how to play for, like, a really, really long time.
And I think this has been exacerbated by the fact that you're very small, and once you started getting strong in a Muay Thai style, you started fighting bigger and bigger and bigger girls.
Which limits what you can do.
Which limits what you can do, and also limits how playful you can be. Like, you're basically, when you get in the ring, you're opposite somebody who can fucking rip you with a kick. So it tends to produce tension in you and a very defensive, fortified body concept.
Yep.
So not getting sparring for lots of reasons not comfortable. The feeling of sparring didn't feel good or was not fun ever. And so you pulled away from it. And then when you fought and you fought and fought and fought, you were fucking fighting giants, which made a more fortified sense, which is really kind of, so we've talked about it in other Muay Thai Bones podcasts, but we've talked about the urge, the desire to grow eyes.
Well, why don't you review what that means for people?
Well, this is my own perspective, but a lot of male fighters, Western male fighters, and most female fighters, in my opinion, and even some Thai female fighters also, there's the fighting zone, the pocket. What people do is they learn combinations to hold their breath and throw their combination to cross the fighting zone. So they're
like bite down and leap.
They basically bite down and leap.
Yeah.
They're not seeing what's unfolding in the fighting zone. They've practiced in training very rigorously a kind of like 1, 2, 3, and whatever your combination is, you might have 2 or 3 combinations, but you're like, you could do it with your eyes closed. And you do it to cross the fighting zone. It's a way of kind of like faking that you're fluent in a language. It would be like if you memorized 10 phrases and you could pronounce them with no accent perfectly in a foreign country. And people might think wow, your Italian's amazing, when in fact you can only say 10 different phrases.
Right.
I feel like that's the context of a lot of female fighting and even male fighting too. Being around such great fighters in Thailand, what's clear is that the Yod Muay, like the ones that we train with, like Karahat, Diesel Muay, they had amazing eyes.
This is something that you'll actually hear when Thais talk about the best fighters, or even in commentary on fights.
Yeah.
Dadi means like good eyes.
Yeah.
And it means being able to see. They talk about Samart, Chamok Pet, like people who can like see what you're doing.
And you can see this anytime you want to turn on a Thai fight of Sanchai versus any Westerner.
One person can see.
One person can see. The lights are on in the room for one person and they're off for the other person.
Yeah.
The other person might be highly skilled, highly developed as a fighter, like very experienced, tough, well trained. If the lights are off, the tension goes up.
It's like the end of Silence of the Lambs when he's got the night vision goggles on and Clarice is like...
A little bit like that. So, 3.0, a big part of 3.0 is, okay, well, let me just say this. First of all, you've been blessed and more experientially cursed with the fact you cannot throw a combination. It's one of the best thing. I think it's one of the best things in the world, because it means you couldn't fake fluency. You just would not get to the point where you'd be like, left, right, low kick, hook, low kick. Like these memorized things that allow one to kind of like fake your way through the fighting zone. Instead, you developed a Muay Thai armored style so that you could get into the clinch and destroy in the clinch. It served you really well. You beat really big opponents, world champions, people that normally should be able to control you. But because you didn't have the crutch of a combination Muay, now adding eyes is really, really cool, because it is the ability. There's very few people who've been training in Muay Thai for 8 years and with 200 plus fights, 250 plus fights, and now suddenly you can level up a huge jump.
Well, what's cool is I can feel that. Like, I always compare it to Quicksilver, where like the world just slows down for him.
Yeah.
Is that it's like when you're learning a language and all of a sudden words start jumping out off the page, like you were sounding out all the like coupled letters to be like like it's hard, and then all of a sudden like you read a street sign. Like,
and don't even think about it. Don't even
it's
think
like
about
the magic eye thing where you're like
Yeah.
a dolphin, like you can see it. is that it feels like that when I'm sparring, and all of a sudden I just see something. Like I'm getting hit in the face, and I'm like, block, block, opening. Like you just see it.
Yeah, and you can't train it. Part of it is just acclimating. This is one reason why we committed to 10 rounds of sparring minimum.
Right.
It's like we just have to trust that the body is going to absorb information and figure out what's going on just through acclimation.
Yeah.
I'm always returning in my mind to David Goggins's Navy SEALs training, where he's
Several
like,
times.
what do you mean?
He did the training several times.
Yeah, but for some reason, being in the cold, surf, the water where hypothermia is right there at the edge, and everybody wants to get out of the fucking cold water, and he's like, I'm gonna break my sergeant's mind by loving this. Like, I do not want to get out.
Yeah.
There's a thing that when the body just isn't waiting to get out, it's not looking at its watch like 15 more minutes, 13 more minutes, counting down. When you're just like, I'm just sparring all day today.
Yeah, well, that's also something that, like, people who are watching me, including you, but trainers who have been frustrated by me for a very long time, all of a sudden I'm doing things that they're like, I didn't know you could do that.
Where did that come from?
All of a sudden my vocabulary is like, bing, like just out of nowhere.
It's been crazy.
And I know these things, I just don't have I haven't been able to, like, play. I haven't been able to go into an open field and kind of, like, mess with it.
Yeah.
Many years ago, Kevin and I were watching, I think it was UFC by then, it might have been WEC, but Anthony Pettis doing his, like, jumping off the cage knockout of Henderson. And what I said when, I think I actually missed it and only saw it on the replay, but I was like, you can tell he does that all day.
Yeah.
He does that all day.
Yeah, he's like bouncing off the cage.
And so, like all of a sudden
long.
Sylvie's like, where the fuck did Sylvie's femur thing come from? Like, I'm femuring around the ring after having been RoboCop for 10 years and people yelling at me is like, no, I can do that too. But you have to do it all day.
But you're not trying to do it. That's the other thing that's so cool about this is by immersing yourself in it, hardcore, just like there's no end to the rounds that you're going to be, like you did 15 rounds today.
Yeah.
Suddenly you just give in. It's like an ultra runner who gives into fatigue. And you're like, I'm just going to be unbelievably tired.
It's not going to stop.
It's not going to stop. I think something happens that suddenly the instinctive, perceptual mechanism of the ancient human being who is a predator and prey for 1,000,000 years starts to fucking take over and see things. You start to see the kick before it's even been launched at you. That as things slow down, suddenly your stress levels go down. Like there's things that you don't really even have control over. And I don't know that somebody who's a year into Muay Thai would benefit from 10 rounds of sparring. Like every day, maybe it would be difficult. Maybe you don't have the defense enough to protect your head and you could risk head trauma. Like we're not saying to recommend this to someone else. It's just like in Sylvie's path, which is like been pretty incredible, like it's unparalleled. There's a whole chunk, there's an undiscovered continent that has been basically just unmapped. That other fighters spend a lot of time sparring. It's not unmapped for them. For you, it's unmapped. And it's like, and you did do sparring occasionally, but it was always like with the emergency brake on. Like, when is this over? Trying to do things like you have 3 rounds of sparring, you're like, I'm going to try to throw my right hand. Everything's trying. When you spar that much, you're no longer trying anything. Like you're allowing your body to just live in sparring, right? So how has that been for you, like to just throw yourself in it? It's been maybe, is it like 10 days now that you've been doing it?
No, it's maybe about that.
Okay.
Today's the 20th, 10 days.
10 days.
How has it been?
It's been exhausting, right?
It's
one of the
fucking
unexpected things is
exhausting.
how you come home and it's like, I'd rather have been lifting weights for 7 hours.
There are so many reasons that it's exhausting. It's exhausting because I have tension, and so I'm just like tense for half an hour, which is physically exhausting. physically exhausting because it's 6 rounds. It's 30 minutes. It's very real
Well, you're talking about
power.
a particular thing.
That's with Yodkhunpon, but even
Yeah.
with Nan, who is heavier than me but short, less experienced, all these things, like, it's not a like, oh, I'm totally untense and relaxed all the time with these things. Like,
Yeah.
it's emotionally exhausting. It's mentally exhausting. It's incredibly rewarding too. Like, it's not all just bad. Like, I surprise myself. I get excited about something that I was doing, but it's just like, it's like how I talk about when you're training in Thailand in a 2-hour training session, so much happens that it's incredible. It's like a week of work in 2 hours. And so you like paint with a brush how that was within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Take that amount of time and just compress it into sparring, and it's like so much happens at every moment because your mind is just like holding this, letting go of that, trying this, like upset about this, getting angry, being like, calm down. Like, it's just, it's given that things are starting to slow down, it's very like high pace, like frenetic for my mind, I think.
Totally. You're getting fried a little bit, but part of that is just the acclimation. I call back to this thing, beautiful thing. I think you wrote it rather than vlogged it, about getting your sakyant.
My tiger.
Was it your tigers?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like the pain. Pain is the teacher, and the pain of that sakyant on the back. And Arjan P, who's your sakyant master, when he starts feeling you feel the pain, he starts digging in with the needle more. He's like,
when he feels you react to the pain. Yeah,
he starts pounding, pounding. He's trying to get you to let go.
And then when you let go, he like lightens up a little bit.
But you were like, I think you wrote it in that blog post. I'm gonna try to link it, but it was like, I have to accept that this pain will never might not stop.
Yep.
It's not like 15 more minutes and he's going to take a break. No, this pain might not ever stop, which is really the Buddhist message that life is suffering, right? And there's this thing about throwing yourself into sparring. It's like, sparring might not stop. Might not ever stop.
Totally.
And then so we're like, let's do a year of this. It might not stop. And in 10 days, it's been pretty fucking incredible. The changes that have happened to you. Who knows? It might now become incremental improvements, or you might regress and then go forward. You cannot tell what it is. But the idea is, as long as our training remains stable, to just keep climbing in this thing, and this feeling of just like giving in to it might not ever stop. I think that there's a dimension of that could be very freeing. And there's a few things in your training that's like this to me. I remember when we were in Fort Montgomery in New York, and you were taking lessons with Master K. We'd drive for an hour and go take a lesson, and we were like, you need more work. And we bought a heavy bag for the spare bedroom that was in our little cottage. And it was hard for you to work on the bag. And I remember us talking about it and thinking about it. It's like, you cannot become a great fighter without loving bag work. Like, you've got to fucking love it. Not be good at it or endure it. At some point, you have to fucking like, I want bag work.
Have hunger for it.
Hunger for it. And at the time, you were like,
And now that's sparring.
Yeah, but you know what? It took many years, I think, but it took so much bag work in Thailand that you finally just totally overcame that hill.
Yeah.
Like, if you had to do 20 rounds of bag work, you could do 20 rounds of bag work without it being a fucking problem.
Because I know how to play on the bag.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then that's a big part of it, is eventually getting to the point where you can play. You like being in control of your training. You like steering the boat, right?
Captain of
You
my own
seem like
ship.
you're getting stressed by bringing it up.
No.
Well, I think that's the point in sparring, is to just submit yourself to it so extensively that suddenly the stress levels are down to a point where you can start doing what you want.
Yeah.
Right? You just
Captaining my own ship.
Yes.
But it's also, you can also experience that in sparring with different partners, which is like, you're doing that to me versus I'm doing that.
I don't follow that. What does that mean?
I get really frustrated when my opponent is like hitting an opening over and over and over again, and instead of like being calm and being like, okay, let's just close that window because the rain's coming in, it's like, you're doing this to me. But that's not true. My frustration is coming from me. It's got fucking nothing to do with that opening being hit. It's got to do with my feelings about that opening being hit, and I can control that feeling, but instead it's like, I have to make you stop making me feel that way. And it's like, no, I stop feeling that way, and then I make you stop hitting it. And it's like this very trudging process of like unteasing all of those knotted Christmas light emotions and physical feelings. Like, they're
totally
a mess.
They're not a mess. They have order to them. They follow patterns,
Yeah.
right? And you're just becoming more aware of it. This is a really good segue into our next segment.
Okay, let's check batteries and stuff. Rolling.
So the next segment is also having to do with sparring. And it's a special thing that we've been doing. You've been sparring with Yodkhunpon 6 days a week.
Every morning,
Every morning.
half an hour.
So, first of all, who's Yodkhunpon if no one doesn't follow what's going on?
Yodkhunpon Sutraipum is, his alias was the elbow hunter of 100 stitches, which is the fucking most badass.
I have to say
alias
he
ever.
wins the
It's
best.
so cool.
He wins the best.
But he is the greatest elbow fighter ever, bar none. And he lives next door to the gym, and he's amazing. He's very sweet. He's in the Muay Thai library for patrons who want to watch him. He's also on demand in the Sylvie study intensives. He's not like anybody else. He has a very distinctive style, and he thinks a lot about what I am, or what's working or what's not working. Like, he stops and thinks about something. And it was actually a little bit difficult when we first started this process of just wanting to spar with him. He's not that much bigger than me, which is really good, and he's Yod Muay, so he has control. I'm never afraid he's going to hurt me. He has very good control, but he fucking puts it on. Like, even though it's not physical pain, it is scary as shit. Big men, like 70-kilo men, which is considerably bigger than Yodkhunpon. He's what, like 54 maybe?
Maybe 54.
They're like, he scares me. Like, I have to like get away from him. Caro's like 60 kilos, and she's like, it's a lot.
Yeah, he brings to sparring real fight energy. It's
very real.
It's pretty intense and
But
incredible.
even when we first started, we had to make it very clear. We're like, no teaching, not because he doesn't have anything
He's
to
actually
offer.
an incredible teacher, but we don't want that to be the experience.
Because that's like, stop all the time. And it's like, let's not do that, like, flow. So
Yeah.
I can tell that he sees something that he like thinks about and wants to fix. And then he'll just be like, okay, let's just drive at it. Like, we'll just,
I think he's been
just
pretty.
go
He's
after
been
it.
pretty like.
he makes me figure it out, which
Yeah.
is really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's
fucking incredible.
It's complicated because
Why?
Because he's amazing and he's so sweet and I trust him, and so that trust allows me to go through some heavy shit that if I was training with someone who I didn't trust emotionally, I don't know that I could handle.
Well, what heavy shit? What does heavy shit mean? Like, it's like shorthand for something. Like your feelings about violence or your shame as a fighter,
I can't even
we're
identify
podcasting
every piece of it, but it's like,
Well, what do
the
you
word
mean?
is overwhelmed. I am overwhelmed. It's like waves crashing on you, and you can gasp for air sometimes, and you know that it's enough air for however long you're underwater, but it doesn't feel like that's enough air.
Yeah,
And so you're drowning even
and
though
it's
you're
that
not
point
drowning.
that you're below the surface, and you're like, if I don't get to the surface in like 5-10 seconds, I'm in serious trouble.
Yeah, and the waves fucking pulling on you. Like there's an undertow rather than it just being like, let's find the rhythm of the laughing.
And it's a little bit how his style is that he has this like suffocating, like I remember Machito, the BJJ guy, and people describing how certain really high level BJJ guys suffocate you with
like a
they get on
blanket.
top of you and you cannot extricate yourself. Oh, still going.
That's fine.
His pressure style is a little bit like that. It's like, it's a suffocating style where he's like clinch grabbing on your neck and pulling and clawing and ripping elbows on you. Like he wants to take your breath and your will.
It's interesting you bring up jiu-jitsu because there's this amazing movie, Red Belt.
Oh, totally.
And the line from Red Belt is when this woman wants to take some kind of class for self-defense because she's experienced violence, and the teacher is explaining to her, how do you feel standing here if I stand here? And he just keeps getting closer, and she starts having anxiety, and his lesson is, don't stand there. Like, right. I'm gonna cry. Like, where her highest anxiety is just don't stand there. The hard thing about Yodkhunpon is that it's the inverse of that, where if you're this close, he's fucking all over you, and if you're that far away, he's kicking the shit out of you. So basically, don't stand anywhere except
the hardest,
here.
The hardest like spot.
This tiny little rock that's covered in slime in a raging river, and you're like,
totally,
stay there. You're like, how do I stay here and also like do amazing things? But it's
But if you can stand on that rock,
and I do stand on that rock,
you can stand anywhere. That's the key that you are acclimating yourself to, and that's so special about him.
Well, he's incredible, and that the first time I ever worked with him, and you can watch this in the Muay Thai library, the first entry with Yodkhunpon, he showed me his like stepping, he's southpaw, he does this like stepping elbow to your front side that I had never experienced, how like all the fear, like all of it, even though I knew he wasn't going to hit me, was in this like millimeter of space. And I take that millimeter away all the time because I'm nervous, because I'm polite, because of whatever. And then the next time we worked together, I had closed that millimeter of space, and he was like, that was too close. Like he felt it.
Yeah.
The amazing thing about Yodkhunpon is that when you steal from him, it's those little millimeters, and I can tell that he is legitimately like, I cannot get away from you, or like, that was too close, or that would have knocked me out.
Because you're using his dark arts on himself.
But he's very honest about it. He's very like, oh, I can't get off from that.
And I've done some film studies of their sparring. You can look on Sylvie's YouTube. That will capture some of what we're talking about, this like infighting space of suffocating and pulling yourself out of it to catch a breath and going back in. He is trying to teach you to acclimate yourself to his like particular evil.
But so that's sparring with Yodkhunpon, and then I'm also sparring with other people. So I have this like range of every morning going through this fucking like incredibly hard, emotionally, physically difficult experience that I'm like, I don't even know how to describe this, or if I would need to. I don't know how common it is for other people. But sometimes when you go through something really intense and you like throw yourself into it and you like gut yourself to be able to draw everything that you need to be able to get through it. And then when it's done, you're emotionally raw.
You're vibrating. I can feel you vibrating at a very high rate.
It's like, I need a minute. And it's like, it's very hard, and we're working on this like have pride all the time, and then on top of it he's like, you're getting better every day, like he's so positive, and I'm like, I just fucking
we should be
went through a
clear about
shipwreck.
it. He's not a super positive dude, so when he's positive, he's not like a D kind of guy.
He is a positive guy, but he's not a like,
he's not
what you're saying.
He's not a Thai trainer who's like,
he does not say
Bangkok,
good if he doesn't
Bangkok.
think it's good. For sure.
And this is the other beautiful thing, just to stay on him and sparring with him, he also turns up the heat As soon as you get acclimated, he makes it hotter.
Karahat's like that too. The two of them have this little like, oh, I see you've got that down. Let's turn it up a little
bit. A little bit. But this is how you grow.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you don't really get the like run a victory lap. You know, like, oh, I've mastered the blah, blah, blah. So this is an easy session. Every session, he is turning up the intensity
this is
for
what
you.
Kevin and I had an argument this morning because Yodkhunpon was just incredibly positive, and I was like regurgitating all of the things that I felt I hadn't done right or that I have problems with or whatever this thing is. And Kevin's like, wouldn't it be so great if two people were talking about how great you are instead of one person and you arguing against them, kind of thing. Is that one thing that Yodkhunpon says to me? I have a hard time. I have a very hard time accepting compliments or positive whatever.
Especially real compliments.
It's a thing. A lot of people have it. And it's something to work on. I'm not defending it. But when he says something like, this morning he was talking about, he started grabbing me a lot. Like on our first day, he kind of like was just doing a lot of other stuff. And then day 2, he came so hard and he just starts grabbing me. I'm a clinch fighter. I grab all the time. And he's forcing me to like be the one who's like disengage, re-engage, disengage, re-engage. He's like, I don't give you anything easy.
Did he say that?
He is not lying.
Yeah.
There is no part of me that's like, he let me do that.
Yeah.
Other than that trip that drives me crazy, the like getting out of the clinch thing, I feel like he lets me do that when he's showing it to me.
Sometimes.
But when he's like, I don't give it for you easy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I believe that I fucking earned every time that he's like,
giving up.
Enough. Like,
and he today was talking about how it's the control. You control the space in front of your opponent. Totally. And so he feels like that's what he's teaching you. He's like, if you can control the space in front of your opponent, he's like, I remember him saying today in English, this is very important. And this is what all the combo fighters do not do. The combo fighters start outside the space and then leap in with a bop, bop, bop,
and then leap
bop,
out.
bop, bop, leap out or pivot out or whatever it is, take a break, take a break, take a break. He is like, and if you watch the Golden Age fighters, this is why Golden Age fighting is so awesome, is they're both in the fucking space trying to control it.
Well, this is, I remember us talking about this on the balcony. So this is in a Muay Thai Bones podcast where we were talking about the UFC fight that we had to watch zoomed in. And so really you're watching a fight of space, like who's winning the space. And that is real Muay Thai. Like that's high level Muay Thai, is the battle over space.
Yeah.
And so he's feeling that and talking about that in our sparring.
And because he's so experienced as a fighter, I'm always returning to the idea of the poet. The poet knows language and knows meter and music so much that when you're going through a poem with them, with language with them, they can feel where all the beats should be.
Yeah.
And so there's almost a very instinctive instruction that's going on. He's guiding you through pressure and intensity in this fight space, which is the opposite of teaching techniques. Techniques generally are taught regardless of fight space. They're seen in the abstract, like a geometry, a cube, that is just like, this is how the kick goes, the foot goes there, this goes here. This is everything that's opposite that in a weird way.
I don't know if it's true, but I read it in a book about how baby giraffes get kicked down by their mothers to force them to learn to stand really fast because it's dangerous. On the veldt, it's dangerous. So the baby giraffe will stand up, so it figures out how to stand up, and the mother giraffe will kick it down to be like, do it again, like figure out how to do it faster.
Totally.
It feels like that, where it's like, it's not the like, mama duck, we go this way, and like, find your way to swim behind.
Totally.
It's like, do that, bop, do it when it's harder.
When it's harder, yeah, totally.
It's amazing.
Is there any more to talk on this? I guess in the...
It is very fast progression. Like, I'm different every day.
It's... There... it's very hard that you're going to find somebody who's put 10 years into a martial art, and suddenly is like exponentially improving. I don't know if it's going to happen in fights yet, whenever they come, because fights have a fucking, you're very armored in fights,
Yep.
but they very well might be showing up there with all the sparring that's going on.
That would be cool.
Be very cool. But no expectation, right? It either comes, why are you laughing like that?
Because that's
Who knows? It either comes or it doesn't. If it doesn't come in the first 10 fights, it'll be there. If we keep up with this, it'll be there 100 fights from now.
Yeah, my Thai was like that, honestly. Like, it was like cumbersome and difficult to communicate all the time. And then all of a sudden it was like I was talking on the phone to a promoter
Yeah, totally.
out of nowhere.
All right. End of segment. Rolling.
Rolling.
Do you want to introduce this one?
No.
You look
don't like
pretty
introducing-
cute there,
I don't
grabbing
like
your coffee.
introducing things.
Well, we've talked in the past about Roop, which we spell R-U-U-P, which is the Thai word for what is the Thai word for?
It's
It's your form.
It's like gestalt. It's like your physicality. It's your body or your image.
It's your silhouette in a certain regard. So one of the parts of 3.0 that we've been focusing on, and to add to this 10 rounds of sparring, is focusing on Roop, which is maintaining a Yodmoy. Yodmoy meaning like an elite level fighter's Roop. Now every fighter has to find their own Roop, right? It's kind of like every poet has to find your own poetic expression. You can borrow your Roop from people you admire, but it tends to be something like, this is me being proud or strong, right?
Diesel Noise got a good one.
What is that?
His like posture, his roop is just like.
So in a big regard, because unlike Western Muay Thai or Western fighting, it's not all about damage points, right? It's not about how much damage did you do, bro. It's about how much you and your opponent can maintain themselves.
Well, I wouldn't have thought of it until just now, actually, but we really love that Sandman creation scene from Spider-Man where he's trying to pull himself out of the pile of sand. That's fucking Roop, like, to a T.
Totally, we gotta
Where
link that. That's so good.
When you're fighting someone, or I think it was Kat Zingano had this beautiful quote or concept that it's intention versus intention when you get in the ring. That's why it's difficult.
Yeah.
Is that you can look awesome with your Padman or against a bag because brick not hit back kind of situation. Is that trying to pull yourself out of that sand pile and keep your form? Like, Sandman cannot keep his form because he's not aware of it yet. He doesn't know it yet. And then he becomes more solid. That's trying to maintain your root. And when you're fighting someone and you can damage or I know the word in Thai, but I can't think of what it is.
Say it in Thai.
Pang means to like crumple. If you can crumple someone's root, so if you knee someone and they stay kind of upright, it's like that didn't have great impact, but you knee someone and they kind of like buckle, that's that like I affected your root. And so you're constantly trying to maintain your root. And something that Diesel Noise spends a lot of energy trying to teach people is to at every single moment maintain your root. It's not just like, okay, that was a 3-minute round, now it's break and I can go slump in my chair in the corner and let people pour water on me. It's like you have dignity at every second. Like, you never let your opponent see a piece of sand out of place.
So, maintaining your root, what we've as part of this 3.0 thing, is yes, when you're on pads, and then you go 1, 2, 3 combination, pop, 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 and then your padman walks in a semicircle to take a little break. Your root is there.
My root doesn't change.
Your root doesn't. His root changed. Your root doesn't change. When the round's over and you go get water, your root does not change. When the whole thing is over and you climb out of the ring, your roop does not change.
There's a very funny Thai commercial that's for like a slimming treatment or something, but it's this woman who's so hot, like she's so hot, and she walks through this office building and everyone is like, oh damn, she's so hot, and she gets in an elevator with this like little I know I'm so hot look on her face, and when the elevator door closes, she's like her like stomach pops out like she's been sucking it in.
Yeah.
That's what we do, and we think it's not that extreme when like we just made it through a round and then we're like, oh, I'm gonna show how much exertion I just put out.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to not crumple the root. And it's
Well, this is very habitual too. It's a habit.
Yeah, that's an extreme example of how people put their hands on their hips or like lean over the ropes or like let out their sigh or whatever the thing is. That's obnoxious, and that's just like that person like can't keep their thing together because it seems really big. Equally big, and it's something that I'm learning very fast with Yodkhunpon. I do this all the time. I land something good, take a step back, and let my shoulders slump.
Yeah.
I'm that chick in the elevator letting it hang out without the doors even closing.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not small. Like Diesel Noi, who has taught me so much, he teaches you that it's not, none of it is small. Like not one moment is small.
Yeah.
You have to have that dignity all the time, and it's something that you have to divorce in your head from this Western concept that I know I have, which is that you have this like authentic self that's underneath a performance. In Thailand, the performance is real.
Yeah.
The performance is it. Like that's the real authentic thing is the performance. So if you do that, that's who you are.
Yeah.
So like if you have dignity at every second, it's not a like, oh man, I finally get to take the Batman
real.
mask off.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you are Batman, like
Totally.
all the time.
So how has this been for you just as an effort to like walk through the male gym, it's a fucking male space, with constant roop? Like, one, it's been hard because there's so many times where you feel like I can let my shoulders fall.
Well, it is being in a male space. It is being in, there are so many elements that go into it that's not me. But it is also me, which is that I am a little scorpion who likes the dark corner. Like, I don't want to be noticed. I'm very, like, don't pay attention to me. Like, kind of, I like being invisible. But you can be invisible with dignity.
Yeah.
Like, you can... Rambaz is a good example of this. Rambaz got this like puffed chest thing that he does, and he turns it on like it's kind of his like hammy, like superhero thing.
Yeah.
But it's real. Like it's very much him. You can be the little Mighty Mouse strutting around without it being like, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Well, I watch your roop all day. I come to training now, and mostly I'm just watching your roop. I'm just watching for your shoulders to fall or not, and then to remind you to put them back up. I notice a real difference of how people respond to you, especially in the times between trainings when your roop is strong.
What do you mean between trainings?
Like, not just after a combination, but when you're like waiting for sparring to start in 5 minutes.
Between things.
Yeah, between, I don't know what you'd call those, events.
Yeah.
Training events,
Yeah.
that when your roop is strong in the between times, people who are male guardians of the space, I'll put it that way, they're like, I don't have to worry about that one.
Interestingly, and I had not thought of this until just now, Kevin and I call it, it's like putting my shoulders up is like a dog having its tail up. And I was telling my mom on the phone, I think it's Cesar Milan or someone has like I think his wife made a contraption that actually forces a dog's tail up so that when you're like, what is the word? Rehabilitating a dog, you force its tail up to give it confidence in a space. And it's this physical brain connection that even though the dog is not putting its own tail up, because the tail is up, it gives it confidence.
Yeah.
And so I'm like tail up, tail down, tail up, tail tucked, like all this stuff that's like keep that tail up. And I wouldn't have thought of it until just now, but it is as difficult and as
Rewarding?
not rewarding, but like significant of a change as my eye contact thing was. I could not maintain eye contact for a second
in sparring or fighting.
in pad work or whatever.
Or fights.
And then I noticed that by forcing myself to do it, it changed everything. It's the same thing when you walk around a space and you won't meet anyone's eyes.
Yeah.
And then you walk around and you're like looking at everybody. They respond differently to you too.
Totally. And I'm telling you, on the visibility, invisibility thing, there is a sense that with your tail up, you're visible. But there is a very strong sense in which you become less visible, in the sense that these guardians of the space, who are always measuring where's the fucked up part, they're like, I don't have to worry about that one because there's a strong energy over there. I'm looking over here at this person who's having a hard time, blah, 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 blah. And so they kind of give you a kind of autonomy in the space, which is very cool. It's not, it's like you've shown that you're your own captain.
Yeah, and for people who maybe are not immediately connecting with this concept, putting your shoulders up or your chest out or whatever, I actually imitate Karahat and put
Is that where that comes from a little bit?
I used to write down in my journal how I wanted to enter the stadium for a fight. It was part of my mental preparation for a fight.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, walk like Karahat. Like, lead with your chest like Karahat.
Yeah.
And every time I did that walking into a fight, I won. Every single time. Like, going away, really, really good performance. For people who do not immediately connect to this with keeping your shoulders up or your posture or your roop, you're not being a dick. Like, you're not, like, Planet Fitnessing around, like...
Pick things up, put things down.
Yeah, like, you're not doing that in the space. But it's kind of like, we see these dogs on the side of the road sometimes when we're, like, driving across Thailand. It's like a stretch of nothing. Like, there's nothing around.
Totally.
And they're, like, doing that, you know that certain pace a dog has when it's, like, doing something? And we just laugh. We're like, he's got something to do. Like, he's going somewhere.
He's going somewhere.
He's going somewhere. It's that. You're not like, that dog's bad. You're like, he's going somewhere. He's got something to do. Like,
Totally.
He's got business.
He's got business. Exactly.
You see me moving around the gym like that. You're not like, what a dick, what a cocky, whatever. You're kind of like, she's got something to do.
She's got business.
She's got business.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool. So related to this is what another dimension of how we're approaching Roop, which for shorthand I was calling it Thor's hammer, which is this. It's an intuition that I had, which is that all of your techniques, all of them, would be improved if you started feeling strong in your shoulders. Mm-hmm. And this just means the way you'd flex a muscle and you'd be like, damn, I'm strong. You getting that feeling of strength in your shoulders, as if it's like Thor's hammer across your shoulders. And so you started experimenting with what would these techniques, what would my guard look like, what would my punches, my kicks, my teeps, what would it all look like if I did them, but from a feeling of strength in my shoulders. And I got this intuition from watching Sen Chern, Pinsenchai fight, who's a very like tight guarded.
I call him the cat.
Tight,
he's got this
tight guard. Most people would think it's very stiff, but I can feel that. And also from watching Samransak,
Samransak,
who was just like a massive puncher, and also from training with Lakin, who has this kind of like, you can tell when someone feels strong in something. Like Yodsun Clyde feels strong in his kick. He's like, let me just fucking blast a wall with this thing. And I'm like, you're naturally just very strong in your shoulders, but a lot of times when you're doing techniques, you don't feel strong in your shoulders. You don't feel that pleasure of strength. And I'm like, we're working on the diamond guard, which is a shoulder type movement, a rolling shoulder type movement. And I'm like, let's just put that feeling of strength in your shoulders into everything. You're the one who did it and has been doing it. What has been the result, or what was the process like for you? Because to me, it's fucking working. It's fucking working.
How do I describe the process? It's a little bit like if we're going to take Thor's hammer thing, is if you're going to like go into a fight, you're like, where's my power? It's in the hammer. Like, you're going to wield that hammer. And so it's like, it's here. So all of your like, where is that coming from? It's just here.
Yeah.
Is that I have a monkey mind that's like always analyzing every little detail. And it's a little bit of a disadvantage that I know as much as I do, because then I have all these things to diagnose.
You're talking about like technical knowledge from all the Muay Thai library and everything.
Chai does it this way, but Yodkhunpon does it that way, and blah blah blah, like all this different stuff. And it's not what people think, where they're like, don't you get confused? Like, I'm not confused about how techniques work. You can alternate between them. It's like how Nabokov will just suddenly choose a word in French that he likes much better than the English one that he was going to use, and then go to Russian. It's like that. It's cool, like beautiful. But over-diagnosing everything, you actually can't feel anything. So when I was like, all I have to do is put my shoulders on the hanger, which is the way that Chai described it to me, where he's like, it's like you put your shoulders on a clothes hanger and then everything else is loose. Like, it's not this overall tension. Yeah. And I can feel that. I'm like, visually, I can feel that. Once I was like, just keep the power in the shoulders, everything became aligned. Yes. It's like it just snapped into place. And so I didn't have to be like, where's my foot going? Where's my whatever? It's like I had this like marionette with loose strings experience of all these, like, that kick was good, but this one wasn't. And I kind of know what it was, but not really. Whereas it's like, just think there, and then like the whole thing kind of snaps into place.
Because everything else is just free to naturally feel and go.
Yeah, but it's also like you just focus on one thing. Like,
well, you were saying this.
Hand the monkey an orange. It's got something to focus on instead of like whatever.
You were saying this is that it was a relief to not have to worry about and think about so many things.
Totally, and it's the same
because you're always
thing
like correcting
when
yourself.
I'm sparring with Yodkhunpon and I'm getting fucking left kicked 80 million times, and I try the 9 different things I can do to solve that, and I get frustrated 9 times, instead being like, get kicked but have root. Keep the shoulders up, and all of a sudden I'm like blasting him in the face. It's like I didn't choose to blast him in the face. That came out of just focus on the one thing.
Totally.
There's something in my... I listen to very old mental training. It's very old. It's from the 80s. And part of what I love about it is the guy has this like super strong New Jersey accent. But I call it my books on tape because it's not actually a tape, but it's very old. He has this thing where he's talking about how if you give people a challenge of throwing markers into the air and you're like, just catch the red one or catch 5, like the more you give the mind
to watch
details, the less you're going to be able to grab. Whereas if you're like, just grab the pink one, people get it like 90% of the time. And he's like, what you really want to do with your brain is you have all these markers and you leave the rubber band on it and you throw it in the air and you catch all of them. It's learning how to put a rubber band around all the things that you want to do. And that's what I feel like that is it puts a rubber band around instead of like, try to catch 10.
Yeah, totally.
You're like, I can catch 10 because there's a rubber band around.
And I think by it being something that you're strong, that you have actual strength in, and for an organism to just feel strong in something it's capable in, like, I'm good at this, you are strong for your size, or maybe any size, in your shoulders, it paints every technique with a good feeling, which is a very big deal especially for people who are very self-critical, is that if you're doing techniques and you're continually painting them with negative associations, like keep your hands up, like all these inner coach thoughts, you're not going to like any technique, even if you're good at it. And so you're not going to trust it under duress. Look at that head shake. What's that about, baby?
This is a big thing. I actually just vlogged about this today because of my experience with my 15 rounds today. But my first day of sparring with Yodkhunpon, Caro, my friend Caro, who has trained with Yodkhunpon, who loves me, who understands me and understands my flaws and difficulties and all this thing. We have many similarities in these senses. She was like, can I watch your first training? And I was like, sure. And I came out of it being like, I was fucking terrible. Like that was horrible. And she was like, you were amazing. Like, hearts in her eyes. Like, you were incredible. And it's like, the correct thing is in the middle. But what my vlog was about today was like, I'm trying to learn how to feel things and trust feelings, and I want to feel good about the things that I'm doing. And you don't have to win all the time. You don't have to get it right all the time to feel good. You should feel good about things that might not necessarily immediately feel good. But if you're constantly like, I'm shit when you do something amazing,
yeah, you'll never do it.
Baby, there's no, like, Robert Plant is not like, I'm shit. Like, you can't be like that and go out and do that.
Totally.
You can't sing, like, you can be self-critical,
yeah.
but you cannot go out and sing like Freddie Mercury
yeah.
if you think,
yeah.
I'm shit.
Yeah.
You talked to Skarbowski today.
Yeah.
He's on Reddit now, John Charles Skarbowski. And Kevin was asking him, like, do you ever feel like you're overshadowed by everyone knowing Decker? Being like, Decker was the greatest. Because Skarbowski was pretty awesome.
It had more success than Decker,
times.
more success than Decker's for sure.
And so he's like, do you ever feel like you were kind of overlooked or unfairly not given?
Well, I said, are you possibly the best Farang who ever fought? And he's like, you have to think that way in order to get in the ring.
Yeah.
So that was a very politically correct answer. It was a great way to answer, but he's kind of like, I have to think that way, that I'm the best.
Yeah.
And there is this kind of like, you have got to tap into the pleasures of what you're capable of in order to like soar.
But you don't have to lie to yourself. Like, I'm never going to be.
You're always worried about this part.
Because to me.
Because you're so self-critical.
Yes, but there are people like me that I'm speaking to, which is that you don't want to push yourself into inauthenticity, because then you're hiding under your feeling of inauthenticity. But there is something real that you can find in that experience, like my shoulders.
Yes.
Which is like, instead of, I'm so great, I can get Yodkhunpon off of me when he's in his fucking like trailer hitch mode. Instead, I'm like, I can absolutely endure this with my shoulders up.
True, but I will say that pessimistic, critical people think they're being objective when they're actually being super negative.
Kevin gets upset because I argue against myself.
You are the supreme inquisitor of Sylvie. You always have the master argument, but I'm just like,
I'm an angel and two devils.
so, totally, it's 2 against 1. But that's why my intuition was, let's start feeling your shoulders, because this is real. You don't have to fucking fake that you're strong in your shoulders. And you already know, one reason why you're an awesome clinch fighter is you feel strong in your shoulders when you're clinching. So
my opponents feel I'm strong in my shoulders
totally,
too.
but you already know what it's like to feel that.
Yeah.
You're like, it's not like you have to convince yourself. You're like, okay, let's just take this feeling that you already have and let's start apply it to all your Muay. And it's changing your techniques. It's unleashing your techniques in a really great way. And it's connecting up with what we mentioned before, which is your Roop walking around the gym, your Roop getting water, your Roop when coming off of a pad. We have to work on your Roop after you land a great strike. Your shoulders should be popping instead of slumping. But it's a really interesting dimension of growth that isn't technical.
Yeah.
It's not like put your shoulders up, like keep your hands up. It's a feeling.
Yeah, and it's like the dog's tail, where there is a connection in the brain to that physicality where it becomes real.
Totally.
Like, you fake it and it's real.
It happens just like your eye contact. Okay, that's good. Let's take a break.
Now we're rolling.
Rolling. Okay, next topic. That was a pretty long stretch for Sylvie's process.
Let's talk about
We're gonna
Sylvie.
let Sylvie.
I love talking about
Introverts
myself.
love when you just talk about them on
Enough
camera.
about you. Let's talk more about me.
So we're switching it up. This is a line of thought that we came upon, or we've been developing between the two of us, maybe it really came to fruition when we started doing a translation project. Because of the help of our patrons, we started hiring a Thai English translator to translate the Thai commentary on classic fights. Like, everybody has seen classic Muay Thai fights on YouTube, but you can't hear what the Thai announcers are saying.
Well, you can't understand what they're saying.
This is the same thing.
Same thing.
Thanks for that correction, baby. You can't understand what the Thai announcers are saying, so we translated this fight between Chomungpet and Pai Dang.
Pai Dang.
And if you want to take over on that?
Well, you should go watch it, is the first thing I'll say. You would not know, like, you might have an inkling, like, oh, I wish I could understand what the announcer was saying, but people who now can understand what the announcer is saying are like, this was incredible, because they're talking about the gambling all throughout, like how the odds are changing. And Kevin and I found this really fascinating because fighting in Thailand, we know the importance to some degree of gambling and odds. And if you go watch a fight at Lumpini and Rajadamnern, you can see them watching the gamblers between rounds.
Who's
to
them?
See the people in the ring. Like,
Yeah.
you can see the fighters, their corners, their gym owners, the referee. Like, everyone is looking at the gamblers to see, like, how is this being interpreted, to know what to tell your fighter for the next thing. Ajahn Gimyu, who's 78 years old, he was a trainer of Golden Age fighters. Gansak Lakhin, my trainer Kurnu, he'll just listen to gambling, not even watching the fight. He'll just listen to it because he's like, I need to know how they're seeing fights right now so that we know how to train our fighters and how to tell our fighters what to do.
And we have to say, because of Samart and Sanchai interviews in the past, there's this story like gambling has ruined Muay Thai, and we did a piece on this about the ways in which gambling may be a problem in modern Muay Thai now compared to maybe past decades. But gambling is essential to the comprehension of Muay Thai in Thailand. And one of the most interesting things in this Chomungpat fight is the fight is fairly close, and then something happens, and the odds just go way up.
Yeah.
When those odds change, the fight is so unbelievably changed. But if you don't understand Thai, the Thai announcer, and you're not aware of what's happening in the stands, you don't know that the fight has changed like that.
Yeah, like if we're watching a horse race, you have eyes, and so you can see a
Yes.
horse pull way in front of another one where you're like, well, he can't catch him without a miracle now.
Yeah.
You can't see that necessarily unless you really understand Thai scoring, but they're telling you that horse just pulled way ahead.
Yeah, and you might think you understand Thai scoring, but you're not aware that in the arena, the odds just went whoop.
Yeah.
And this is, to me, you might understand American football, but if
I don't.
but if two fumbles were recovered and suddenly there's a 14-point change in the lead, in the score, the game is a completely different game. The team that is behind has to play very, very differently if they're down 14 points when the game was tied just 5 minutes ago. And if you're not aware, like when we watch classic Thai fights, we have no sense of what the gambling is saying as the fight is proceeding, so we don't know the score.
Yeah, this is something that's, I think, hard for people to swallow and admit, is that you do not know how this sport is scored as well as you think you do. In Thailand, I don't, as well as I think I do, and then I watch something like this and I'm like, I think I got a deeper understanding of it. Kevin and I just watched the, I can't remember what it's called now, the Michael Jordan...
Last
Dance. Documentary. I don't watch basketball. I don't know much about basketball. But prior to watching this documentary, I'm like, well, there's 5 seconds left in the game. It's over. You're like, not in basketball. Like, in basketball, 5 seconds can completely change a game that has, like, a pretty disparate score. It's insane. You have to understand that possibility if you don't understand that possibility, and I'm like, oh, well, this game is over, there are people who watch a Muay Thai fight where they're like, oh, well, this person had a good dump in round 2, the fight's over. Or they think that it's really close.
I'm kind of not following you, baby.
I'm saying that the things that completely shift a Muay Thai fight are as narrow as those like last 2 seconds. Like the last 2 seconds of a basketball game can change a game.
Yeah.
And people aren't aware that something went like this.
But it's not only that. When you're watching a game,
I guess what I'm saying is that in order to understand scoring, you have to bring gambling. Like if you don't understand gambling, you're not following the score.
Okay, but it's not understand gambling.
No, it's knowing what the gamblers
literally
are saying.
don't know what the odds are in real time. When you're watching a classic fight, and we've all done it, and who's ahead, what's scoring, blah, 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 you're watching this and you're missing the scoreboard. The fighters and the corners are going off of the scoreboard. So you're assessing, you understand Muay Thai. You understand strikes that score high, don't score high, right? So you're like, I got a pretty good sense who's in the lead going into the 4th round. If you don't know the score that the gamblers are setting for going into the 4th round, you won't understand why a certain fighter is not being aggressive. Or why he is, or another fighter is being aggressive.
Well, this is a good example, is that we watched the one of the Karahat versus Wang Chinoy fights, and we're like, Karahat won that fight.
Totally.
And
Karahat feels like he won that fight.
Right, and maybe he did, we don't know.
Yeah.
But if we could hear the gambling, we might be like, it was too far gone.
I think that's what happened, is that we didn't know about the gambling, and that as Karahat entered the 5th round, he was down on the scorecard, and he did score, but he didn't score enough.
Totally.
Probably.
Going back to basketball, if it's like,
don't use basketball because you don't know basketball.
If you have if you have a very close score and a few seconds left, you can catch. If it's like 90-40, and these people are scoring, there's no way.
That's the other dimension of it, is that if as a fighter you have a big the gamblers are setting the odds, and you have a very big lead, you can let your opponent get small points.
Which is what happened with Chumukpet and Paidang, is something enormous happened in the fight, and it went like this, and you're like, it doesn't matter how good he is now. Like, he's just going to go after him with punches. His only hope is a knockout.
Yeah.
Which if you don't know that the score went like that, you'd be like, wow, he's really aggressive. He's winning. He's scoring,
but you don't understand that he's being allowed small points. It's like
the horse way up here let off the gas.
We're going to too many weird analogies.
Okay.
I think I want to return to the larger idea of how we experience Thai fights on video.
Okay.
Which is, even if you're very knowledgeable, you're missing maybe the most important thing of all, which is, how are the odds being set round to round? Because the corners are looking at the gamblers to see if they're behind or ahead. And once you know if you're behind or ahead, then you decide how you're going to play it. The gamblers, if you were going to be very analytical about it on a video scorecard, you might have set different odds than the gamblers actually rolling. So camera cut off, we're not quite sure. Maybe put this leaning up so we can both see it. We're not sure what we lost. Maybe we'll go back over what we were saying, but we were basically saying that if you cannot read the scores of the odds being set moment to moment in the stadium, you're not understanding why each fighter is fighting the way they're fighting. You might technically at home think to yourself, it's a close fight, but the way that the odds have unfolded, it's not close.
Right.
So a fighter that's in the lead might just let small points score because they're not a threat to his lead. And you're thinking, this is a close fight. Now he's scoring.
Yeah.
I remember there's a Samart fight against Nampon, and Nampon is like there's very few points being scored at the end. It's very poorly edited, like half the fight's missing. But Samart is just like letting these points land on him. And I'm like, Samart's not even landing any points.
Yeah.
I'm like, Nampon won that fight. How did Nampon lose that fight? And I'm like, this basically was like in the bag for Samart. The odds got to the point probably where Nampon was down and he would just need baskets full of points.
Yeah.
So Samart is like, go ahead, kick me, hit me, I'm going to move away. And the lead was never ever challenged. But if you don't know the odds that are unfolding in a fight, you're kind of clueless why the fighters are fighting the way they are fighting. And I was going to say, right when the camera stopped, there was this fight where we went to many years ago. Patron Rung goes to very few of your fights. It was a festival fight. You were fighting Fa Chiang Rai, I think. And it was just like, in the 5th round, you were durning on her. And I could see in your face that you were frustrated and had given up. You were going forward, but you were like, you did not believe that you could win. You were in your own head a lot. And the fight didn't feel that out of whack. Like, it felt like you almost could have won that fight. And I'm like, if you keep going and chasing her, you are really going to lose this fight.
Because I look desperate.
Because you looked desperate and your heart wasn't in it. So I told you to dance off, and you danced off, and Patron Rung was like, what the fuck was that? That's crazy.
They were like, you just had to hit her. Like,
yeah, but you were not going to hit her. I knew you weren't.
Yeah.
And my argument was, I know Sylvie, if she goes forward, she's going to be further behind. Maybe the judges will give it to her. But what I didn't know, I don't know the odds. I don't know the odds that were unfolding. And they were thinking, if you stop, you lose because you're behind on the odds.
Right.
You need a moment that's going to switch this. There's no way for the decision to go to you. Because the score, it's like the score is you're behind.
Right.
So if you stop, you're just behind. There's no way to reverse that.
Right.
And they're like, it doesn't matter if you lost by 5 points or 10 points. Just keep going forward.
Go to the finish line.
Go to the finish line, because they're reading the odds. I didn't know anything. This is years ago. I was technically right, but I was also technically very wrong. Also, another fight that comes to mind was the Pornpon fight. Pornpon, this fighter that is beating everybody, and you got matched up against her. And Hua Hin, a great fighter. This is recently before fighting stopped. And you weathered her for many rounds, had a big 4th round where you dumped her on the ground. And at a certain point in the 5th round, your corner was like, back up, back up, back up. I was watching your corner. I personally felt that the fight was very close, and maybe you didn't do enough to win, but I didn't know the score. I wasn't watching the gamblers. The corner is watching the gamblers. The gamblers are right next to me.
And they're like...
And the corner is telling you, you have the lead. All you have to do is protect it. She came aggressively at you. I don't think she landed. Maybe she landed 1 kick. But the score was so far that in my brain, when I added everything up, it's a very, very close fight. But if you actually knew the score that controlled the 2 fighters, it wasn't close.
Yeah, and that was a fight that there was disagreement online when people watched it, which is not usual for my fights. Usually people are like, that was very clear. This one, people were like, I thought she won, because they, like you, were not knowing what the gamblers
You
were
didn't
saying.
know what the score was. And the thing is that if the score shifts in the eyes of the gamblers, then as a fighter, you fight differently.
Yeah.
You now have the lead. You can afford to take some shots that if you didn't know the score, you couldn't take them.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is something that kind of like, I want to write a article on this, but I feel like, I don't know, should we go into this? This is my theory about triangulation of objective reality, my philosophy. Why are you laughing at me so much? Oh, this is very important.
We're gonna take a sharp turn into Kevin's diagrams.
Well, this is just very basic about how we think objective reality is between you, yourself, and then if you have a rock, you look at the rock and you're like, that's a rock, that's objective. But the way that reality is really constructed is I'm holding a rock. You see the rock. You feel that it's a rock. I feel it's a rock. Our connection to each other, the fact that I could hit you and it would hurt you, that's what rocks do. The connection between us is what makes objective reality very strong. And what's really happening with the gamblers is there's the reality of the fight that's going on, but it's reflecting off of, I'm watching the fight. It's me in the fight. I'm watching the fight. But what's really happening is there's a third party that the reality of the fight is bouncing off of. And as the gamblers are being like, blue's winning, they're setting their bets, their odds, blue's winning, it's this extra dimension, this second opinion about what's going on that then the fighters see and respond to and change how they're fighting, that actually is creating the objective reality of a fight.
This is something that you don't know because you don't read Thai, but this is being talked about a lot right now in Thai media because with COVID, they're going to open up stadiums with live Muay Thai but with no audience. They're like, nobody can go watch, but it'll be on TV, and tons of people are like, the fighters won't know what to do. They won't fight hard if there's no audience.
Because there'll be no score.
It's hearing the squeaky basketball shoes in an empty stadium.
But it's not just cheering.
Yeah.
It's actually setting the score. And I wonder...
It's like doing a stand-up bit with no audience. Like,
but it's
there's
not
no
like
feedback.
that. It's not, yeah, okay, there's no feedback. There's no feedback. And I wonder what's going to happen is the gamblers are all going to be on the phone.
Yes.
So you're going to be in the corner and being like, odds are now 5-3 against, against
but only
blue.
one dude's on the phone.
No, they both have.
Yeah.
They both have their. I wonder if it's going to be like that the odds are going to be set outside of the stadium, or there's going to be someone in the stadium coordinating. I don't know what that is, but this is really important. This is really interesting to me. Is that Thai Muay Thai with its wall of gamblers is actually more real. Then in the West, what we do is we take all the gamblers out, all the odds setting out, and we condense it into 3 judges. So, but you don't get to see how the judges are thinking during the fight.
Yeah.
So you basically have, instead of a real-time interaction of a feedback of the gamblers changing the scorecard over and over again as the rounds are going, you get 3 neutral judges who are scoring it abstractly, and there's no way to know whether you're ahead or behind in, let's say, a Western boxing match. And I feel like the Thai wall of gambler feedback is a really ancient concept of performance and reality, like objective reality. And people are like, the gamblers are distorting, da-da-da-da-da. Maybe. I don't know enough about the changes in Thai culture. We've written a little bit about this. Diesel Noi complains about how gambling odds are not being followed properly. It kind of blows my mind how much information is lost in old videos of Muay Thai. It's like you're watching basketball games with no scoreboard or something like that. And I'm like, instead of being like, gambling is the problem, I'm like, it's kind of exciting to be like, gambling is this beautiful dimension of reality in Thailand.
Honestly, I use this as the example a lot because I think it's very true. It is the live audience for a stand-up comedy show. Other people are enjoying it, other people are laughing, you're like, that was hilarious. And then you watch it with no audience, like in some special, with like the...
Laugh track.
No, with like closed captioning, like just reading it instead of even hearing it. And you're like, God damn, Kevin Hart's not very funny at all.
Yeah,
but it's like,
yeah.
he's hilarious when you're in the group.
And part of being a fighter is not only feeding off of the gamblers, but also the energies of the crowd.
Totally. Rising
up to the expectations. You're coming in as a Muay Thai fighter. People are expecting you to own with knees. You have a responsibility to perform to your silhouette.
When I fought, I've actually fought on the same card as Sanchai more than once, but the second time here in Pattaya, and we were like right up against the ring and watching him, and I was like, shit, this is a totally different experience than watching him
on Thai Fight
anywhere.
or something. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
So that's our little thing on gambling, and you discouraged me from talking about my philosophical theory. I know, but I don't really want to write the article. It's so hard. But it's a very important dimension. Like, people try to think of Thailand as backward and kind of like the gamblers are a primitive dimension of Muay Thai that needs to be modernized.
Or that it's only corrupt or something?
Yeah, only corrupt.
Yeah.
And in the article, I will write eventually, this goes back to the formal structure of ancient Greek tragic drama, that you had the chorus and you had the actors on the play. You had the actual actors on the play, and the chorus was responding
like an audience.
Like an audience, as a stand-in for the audience. So as the audience member, you are not only watching Oedipus go through what he's going through, but you're also watching the chorus, which represents you.
Right, so their horror is your horror.
Yeah. So when they're horrified, you are horrified, and it becomes more real. And so this wall of gamblers is the Greek chorus that is personifying and exemplifying the state of what's going on in the ring, because it's reflecting off of them.
Yeah, well, like another version of the translating the actual commentary where they're talking about gambling and awesome things like relationships between the fighters, all the things, like giving all the context for that. Another version of that is our Watch With Me, where our excitement gets other people way into it, where they're like, I wouldn't have been that into this fight, but you guys are so excited, and so they get really excited. That's the
It's that same thing, that triangulation. And I'll write about this in this article if it ever comes about, is that you want to understand this triangulation, the Greek chorus, it survives in film. In film, it's the soundtrack. When somebody's walking up the stairs slowly and you have the murder music going on,
you're a little nervous.
You're more nervous than if it was like a tinka tinka tinka, right? The soundtrack is setting the emotional framework of what the action is showing on the film. And it clues in the audience how to be seeing this. This is exactly what's happening with the gamblers of Muay Thai. And this is what you took, who did you take to Raja Damnern? Andrew Zimmern, who's awesome. And you're like explaining to him how the gamblers behind you were this like wall of sound.
Totally. It's like going to watch a ballet with no orchestra.
Yeah.
Like, you need the orchestra.
Totally.
Otherwise it's not Swan Lake.
Yeah. Okay, we did pretty good on that one. Rolling. Okay, this is probably our last segment on this. Normally our Muay Thai Bones go for like epic 3 hours, but I think this is going to be a shorter one. But maybe we'll do another one in a week or two. Yeah. There's been a running series that we've done, which Sylvie has been explaining Muay Thai through Buddhistic principles. The idea is that if you understand these aspects of Buddhism, you'll understand Thai stadium Muay Thai, but also Thailand's approach to Muay Thai, like good technique, improving yourself as a fighter. That buried in the fabric, the culture of Muay Thai in Thailand, are Buddhistic principles, because Thailand's Buddhist. Yeah. So every Muay Thai Bones, we've covered one, and they've usually been a word, like roop. Do you remember other ones that we've done?
Yeah, we've done samadhi, which is concentration.
Roop is form, which we did.
Yeah.
God, we've done so many.
And ning.
Ning was a very big one. We don't have a word for this one. And we're actually probably you're going to run out of words, right? You can't, there cannot be 250 Buddhistic words that describe Muay Thai. So Now it's just a principle or a concept, right? Take it away, baby.
Well, okay, I want to say something about this is not only stadium Muay Thai and Buddhism. To me, what draws me to Muay Thai always has, always will, is its masculinity, its performance of masculinity. What's interesting to me is that Thai masculinity has these reflections of how you're taught to be a man through Buddhism and how you're taught to be a man through a Muay Thai gym, like how to bring up a fighter. There's very much a weird thing that's like Muay Thai fighters are like nak lang, like kind of like poor whatever kind of thing.
Dangerous little
But there's
gangsters.
also this like you are maybe the way that in American karate culture you're like you learn discipline, you learn to be a good person, blah blah blah. You learn to be a good person
like a martial arts code almost,
in a Thai
yeah.
gym.
Yeah.
It's very much a, like we keep kids on the right path by growing up as a
not
Muay.
in gangs, not on drugs, not with motorbikes.
Yeah, but also like how to be a man.
Oh, true. Under duress, fear, violence.
Totally. All these things. How to be a good man. But so this one, I don't have the Thai word for, but I totally have the Buddhist concept and Muay Thai concept for, which is this idea of experiential knowledge being the ultimate goal. Like, there's totally the oh man. Now I can't remember the name of it.
It's okay, baby.
Okay.
Take a moment.
What was
It's
the
all
good
casual.
what was the good to play I was reading when we met that you loved that I wanted to read it?
I didn't think that was a good to play. You're talking about when you were behind the cage?
He makes a pact with the devil.
Faust?
Yes. Faust. So that's not good. So Faust has all this knowledge, like all this book knowledge, and he's just totally unhappy with the limitations of it. And so the opening of Faust is him throwing his books to the side and going out into nature, which is experiential knowledge, real knowledge, to gain real natural knowledge, and ends up making a pact with the devil, which is not what you're supposed to do.
As it happens.
But he learns his lesson at the end, so it's great. This is what that is that in Buddhism, there's this idea that they use this example with sugar, which is that someone who has never tasted sweet can be taught by someone, a teacher telling you what sweet is like. But the very moment you take sugar and put it on your tongue, that is the greatest knowledge. And so the idea is that you can learn Buddhism, you can learn all these ideas, you can learn these sayings, but really you have to experience truth for yourself, and then you will know it. You just know that that's true. Nobody has to convince you of it. So there's no like conversion to Buddhism. It's a philosophy that you're like, that's true. Like you just know it to be true.
It's the practice of experiencing things as true.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's this saying that this is not Thai. This is probably Sanskrit, but it's Pakatan Veditabo Wenihu, which means for each to know for himself, which means like each person has to discover this for themselves. You can kind of guide people of where to look, but
Like,
you
sugar's
have to
over
know
there.
it. Like you have to know it for yourself to really know it, which I love.
Yeah.
Because the reason I started fighting was because I was like, yeah, I can do this awesome like gym Muay Thai, but when someone puts me under pressure, if I can't do it, I don't actually know anything. Like I have to experience the knowledge.
This is so incredible because this is what made you want to fight your first fight.
From the beginning.
But this is fight 264 and you're still on the same passionate path.
Because it's true.
It's beautiful.
But there's also this thing that's like your trainer tells you, hands up, hands up, hands up, smack, you keep your fucking hand up. Like they don't have to tell you anymore because you're like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And this stops that kind of thing. So this seems very simple. This seems great that you just experience something for yourself and then you know it to be true. But it can be really, really hard to actually get that experience, which goes back into my sparring, goes back into fighting, goes back into these things, which is that I can be told and I can believe in an intellectual way that I should do these things, block when someone tries to kick me, try to stay close, whatever. It's all very like intellectual, and I'm like constantly reminding myself of these things. But if you don't actually experience, my block comes up freely
the sugar
and
of
protects
that.
me.
Yeah.
Like in the West, we might call that confidence. You
Okay.
have confidence in your weapon. And I have this difficulty all the time, which is that I do things, like I'm actually doing them, but I don't have confidence in them. And so I'm actually failing to have the sugar on my tongue, even though I'm talking about sweetness
All the time.
all the time, but I
Yeah.
haven't experienced it. And Kevin and I have actually had some arguments about this over time in terms of trying to do something and knowing that it should work or it should be effective or it will change all these things. And I'm like, I've never felt it.
Yeah.
And this is a difficulty in my path in being small, in like fighting people bigger, is people will smack the sugar off the spoon by
great
just
analogy.
being huge. And so you don't have this belief kind of thing. But it's not faith. Buddhism is not faith. Muay Thai is not faith. It's experience. It is this experiential knowledge. But once you've experienced it, for each to know for himself, nobody has to convince you of it anymore.
This is what I've always been talking about, or I've been talking about for a couple of years about growing eyes, is that as soon as you turn the lights on in the room, you don't have to be, nobody has to explain to you where the furniture is. You just see it. And nobody has to be like, this is better than the lights off. You just, single thing is easier with the lights on. It's the same kind of thing of like no theory is required. And I think a lot of Thailand's Muay Thai is about no theory required, and why a lot of Thais have in the past struggled with even teaching technique, because it's just the lights on.
Yeah.
Like that's what sugar tastes like. I don't need to write a theory on what sugar tastes like. Pinu is always talking about tamachat, nature. It's because that's how it was taught to them and how it registers with them.
Right, but it's also a like, he also says he doesn't believe me when he's talking about a student who like doesn't obey him. And he's like, I tell him all the time, but he doesn't believe me. And it is like that. It's someone who's like being obedient because they were told to do something, versus once they experience it, you never ever have to tell them to do it. They'll just do it. And that is tamachat. That is your nature.
Okay. So how do you bring sugar tasting, like how does one bring sugar tasting into technique or the practice?
Right now for me it's 10 rounds of sparring every day. It's trying to get that fucking spoon into my mouth.
That's why we were talking about the sugar of your strength of your shoulders. I wanted to start injecting a sweet taste that you already know, like you know what the sweetness of being strong in your shoulders is. Let's just give you that taste in your mouth on all your techniques, instead of worrying so much about where your foot is and where the angle of this thing is.
This is the thing, is that there are barriers to your own experience, which is crazy. Like, you're putting the sugar on your tongue, but your tongue is like laminated kind of thing, where like you do the things, but you don't have your own trust in them. Like, there are people who have been training for no time at all, but man, they believe in their right hand because they felt it. Like, they feel it, and it will just go kind of thing. That's beautiful. That's sugar on the tongue. Yeah. But there are barriers to your own ability to experience yourself. So
what do you think that is? It's pretty intense.
The insanity of consciousness. But what's cool about it is that it's not a cheat sheet, but my like process for figuring out how to actually bypass these like barriers is that you have to feel yourself. Like, you have to have experience of yourself so that yourself can experience those things. And a lot of people do not have self-experience because they're just being obedient. They're just like yes, I'm supposed to step on the kick, but you don't know why you're
Well,
supposed
you
to step on
just
the
did
kick.
a vlog, part 1, of how to feel a kick. And it was this, some people laughed about it as if this is something that is obvious, but people literally do not know how to feel their own kick. They know how to follow directions on put your foot here 45 degrees, whip your weight around and throw this thing, put your hand here on the, they understand the positions, but once they throw the kick, if you're like, where was your foot? Well, I don't know. Where was your hand? Well, I don't know. Like, they literally do not experience or map where anything is. So because they don't map it or experience it, they can't change it.
Yeah.
And they get very frustrated. You did a vlog, basically was about, these are really rudimentary relationships to your own self. It's a kind of self-knowledge of where is your foot, where is your hand,
Yeah.
and just throwing kicks and starting to become aware of where parts of your body are. So when you're talking about how people in their techniques are so busy trying to please a instructor, let's say,
be good.
and be good, that they have cut off the most direct experience, the most fundamental experience there is, which is of oneself.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mundane example, but people will talk about being mindful. So, like, don't eat your dinner in front of the TV because you don't taste it.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
actually don't even register that you're full, like, all these
Totally.
different things. Whereas if you, like, sit and mindfully eat your meal, you actually taste all the different spices in it. You've now experienced all the spices in it.
Yeah.
You're doing this when you train rote without, like, being present with yourself.
Yeah.
Is you're basically, like, eating in front of the TV.
And I would suggest that female students or practitioners of Muay Thai fighters have an additional burden of this, because women do not automatically qualify as fighters. A fighter, generic fighter default is male. So women are already entering into the training space having to justify why they're even there.
Yeah.
Right? So which means you have to acquire the signatures of proper technique, which means pleasing usually your male trainer. So you're already going to divorce yourself from your own power, your own sugar, your own feelings, just to qualify.
Yeah.
And then once you've learned that and you progress, you just continue on with what already worked, which was learning how to model technique for the approval of an instructor. How does one start, like, even now after all these years, you're starting to try to tap into self-experiential knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Well, you've practicing Vipassana has helped you, because Vipassana is basically paying direct attention to states of your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not interesting?
It is interesting. It's complicated. But it's also not complicated. It's also incredibly simple and just taste the sugar kind of thing. But
You're frustrated by it?
I think that what's difficult about this is that you're telling people to just put the sugar on their tongue, and everyone's like, yeah, at the concept. Like, we're all like, yeah, I get the concept. This has been my difficulty for a very long time with mental training, which is that I'll read a book that's very inspiring and I'm like, yeah, like, I totally agree with all of these concepts, and I'm like stoked by it, and I don't do any of the work.
Right.
I'm like, I'm not going to do the worksheet on the end of the chapter.
Totally.
You've actually just, like, been like, yeah, marshmallows, super sweet, but, like, not actually put it in your mouth. And so I think that my frustration is coming from the experiential knowledge of people being, like, nodding their heads along with this, being like, oh my God, yeah, totally, that's amazing, and then not putting their fucking finger in their mouth.
That's why I'm looking forward to this next technique vlog, or one that you'll do in the future, part 2, when you actually talk about the individual things you can feel in a kick. Because I don't think anyone has ever done it before. Like, people have kicked thousands and thousands of kicks, but they don't know where their hand is. They don't know where their foot is. They don't know where their weight is.
And the important thing,
is
you have to find it for yourself.
for yourself. There's no one else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you feel like this is a key to Muay Thai.
I think it's huge. I think it's really, really big. And it's part of why I love captaining my own ship, is that I'm feeling things, and so I believe them, rather than like, do this,
Sylvie,
it's good for you.
Take your vitamins.
Love that being good for me, rather than like, I actually feel good doing this.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it for now.
Cue music?
Yeah, but don't you tell people,
Oh, what do we tell people?
there's usually like a sign off.
There's a sign off.
Thank you to our patrons, and
Go for it.
thank you to our patrons who make all of this possible. Again, this is free content for everybody. You can watch this on YouTube. If you are a patron, you can subscribe to our podcast. We talk like this in all of them. People really like them. They're very interesting. You can put them on in the background. My mom listens to them slowly over time.
Totally.
I know people who like listen to them on their commutes and their runs and workouts, which is kind of cool that like we're in people's ears when they're
Totally.
working out. But yeah, we love thinking about Muay Thai, and it's a very deep.
I want to do more of
process.
these too. Maybe we can start doing like shorter hour long ones like every week or two.
Yeah, Sylvie gets tired talking a lot, so the shorter one is
Well,
good for me.
the longer ones is we're trapped in the car.
Yeah,
and
we're in the car for
and
like 9 hours.
We kill time
Yeah.
in a really
The
great
batteries
way.
get really hot.
Oh, totally. Okay, cue music.
Dun, 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 dun. Ba-na-na, ba-na-na.